Have you ever asked yourself, how do I make an extra $100,000 a year of passive income? Now I'll tell you, a lot of my clients, they have that benchmark, that 100,000 a year is like that magic number that they want to hit, right? But how do you actually achieve that? And achieve it in a way that's really passive, not just buying an Amazon business or starting another side hustle that requires more overtime hours away from your family to accomplish that. How do you actually do that? Let's just dig right in. All right, so here's the easy answer. The best way to create passive income right now is to get your money working harder for you. Unfortunately, you've always been taught the opposite. You've always been taught to squirrel your money away, right? Like save it up for this big winter called retirement. You gotta squirrel it away, not enjoy anything, live cheap. You know, I was even bad enough that I would turn off the AC in the summertime, I'd turn off the heat in the wintertime to save a couple bucks so I could put more money in the stock market. And then hopefully, as long as the market doesn't crash and I have to wait another 15 years and be in that for the longer haul, I can eventually get to the point where I could retire someday. And that's just not, I'll just tell you this. When my years that I've been as a financial advisor, and even the years since, which has been almost 20 years since I've quit being a financial advisor, I will tell you, very, very few people have ever become successful at this, let alone live on $100,000 a year lifestyle in this way. It's so rare, it's hard to find. I'll give you an example. I had one client that reached out to us, Dan. You know, he heard us on our podcast. Well, he heard me on another podcast, but then came to our Money Ripples podcast later. And he said, you know what? I just went to my financial advisor. I have $1 million sitting in my bank account or in my retirement accounts. My financial advisor says I can live on 3%, which is $30,000 a year. He said, Chris, do you realize that's like living in poverty? You know, I live in California. The state of California, there's no way I can live on $30,000. There's homeless people that live on more than $30,000 a year. I can't do that. And I'm a millionaire, technically. And so that's where we started to dig in deeper. So this is where what we had to figure out. All right, one, what I had to help Dan understand is if you want $100,000 a year in the stock market, if you're gonna live on 3%, you can't have $1 million. You gotta have $3.3 million, really $3.33 million, right? You gotta have at least $3.33 million there in today's dollars. Now, if you want $100,000 lifestyle in 10 years, guess what? You might need nearly double that much money later. You might need $5 million down the road. So you kind of feel like that Dalmatian chasing the fire truck, right? You like keep chasing after, but it's like this view, you're always like, it's always going farther away. That's what most people are doing right now. That's why most people really don't get to the point where they have this comfortable, especially 100,000 plus a year retirement. Because how many people even live on 3.33 million? It's hard to do. I had one guy that actually reached out to us. He said, hey Chris, like I've been saving like crazy. I'm saving $200,000 a year. I finally got to the point where I have over $3 million in my account. So he was at the point where he could actually live on $100,000 a year. But here's what he said. He said, Chris, I just went to my financial advisor and he told me, again, same thing. He said, well, yeah, you can live on $100,000 a year. Well, I don't want to. I want to live on $500,000 a year. I want to live a really comfortable, lavish lifestyle. The financial advisor said, oh, well, then you need to save up to $18 million. And he's like, if you really keep working hard, and as long as the market keeps returning well, as long as it doesn't go down in the meantime, hey, you might be able to get there by the time you're 65, which was in 13 years. And I told him, I said, listen, what if you did this instead? What if you took that $3 million, even if you made 10%, that's $300,000 a year. Not quite $500,000, but $300,000. But you couple that $300,000 a year you're making plus the $200,000 you're saving, that's $500,000 you could actually save together. So now what happens, you can start creating this, instead of like compounding interest, it's compounding income. It's like now you have $500,000, you invest that, making another 10%, that's $50,000 a year. That means their 300 will become 350. The next year it'll be over 400,000. I said within 4 years, you can hit that 500,000 a year and you don't have to worry about inflation because you got 4 years. Inflation's not gonna kick your butt that much unless we have another 2020, right? But for the most part, you'll be able to hit that much, much faster than waiting 13 years as long as the market smiles on you just the right way. That's the big difference right there. So if you're trying to do it in the stock market, just know it's almost an impossible game to live a very comfortable lifestyle, even with your 401k match, which by the way, doesn't do much, they kind of suck. So what's the other option? And the other option is what I learned right after I left being a financial advisor. The thing that got me to leave was, one, I knew that people weren't retiring comfortably, even if they were the best savers in the world. Even if they followed everything to a T, followed Dave Ramsey, they got debt-free and did all this stuff, it didn't matter. My dad was that person. He was debt-free, he paid off his house in 18 years, he had saved all his money, his 401k, got his match, everything every good boy and little girl should do. And then what I have to tell him? I said, Dad, based on the amount of money you were able to save and pay off all your debt and everything else, you better hope you die in 5 years. because that's how long it'll be before you run out of money in retirement. And he was 61 years old, guys. He'd spent decades saving his lifestyle to try to create this for himself. That's just not acceptable, guys. That's why I was like, how can I keep teaching something that doesn't work? Well, flash forward just literally a month after I met with him, I'm talking with real estate investors, and they're telling me, Chris, it's not about accumulating all this money and living on less than the interest of that 3%. It's all about the income it produces. They're saying like, Chris, if you had $100,000, it pays you 1% a month, that's $1,000 a month. And I thought, oh my goodness, that's way better. And all of a sudden my mind started expanding. I started to get really happy. You know, like I was like, all of a sudden I had hope because I realized, wait a minute, I don't have to save forever. I don't have to, for myself, I was even thinking about this, right? Not even just for my clients, but for me. I said, oh my goodness, like, you know, now I thought I'd have to have $2 million saved up, I can now accomplish with $500,000. I can save a quarter of the money and have the same income because I can start getting those kind of rate of returns coming in, contractual rate of returns. I knew it wasn't guaranteed, but then again, I also knew that the stock market was never guaranteed. In fact, the stock market was so risky, and I realized that the return was actually closer to 8% than 12%. You know, I started to realize that there wasn't as much hope. But when I started to see what could happen, I realized there really was hope. It's about the income you produce, not about the accumulation of your money, it's the acceleration of your money. How do you get that income to keep coming in to pay you? Just like I talked about with my client, Dan. Oh, by the way, just kind of let you know about what happened with Dan. You know, Dan actually got to the point where he was able to take that $1 million and generate anywhere from between $100,000 and $130,000 a year off that money. What did he invest in? Everything from like an apartment deal. You know, he did an apartment syndication where he pooled his money with other investors, did some things in the oil and gas space. He even got some duplexes. You know, he even got a variety of things. He even diversified among the real estate space and was able to create $100,000 plus with just that $1 million. And that's the thing. If you want to create $1 million and you're making 10% today, if you have $1 million, you can make $100,000 a year. Right there, just like you were asking about in this video. How do you make $100,000? It depends. It depends on where you're investing. And it depends on how you're investing and how it's paying you. If you actually were making 1% a month, not saying you're guaranteed to get that, but say you're making 1% a month on a deal, well, now you only need about $830,000 because that will create enough for you to get $100,000 a year. See, that's the key. That's the big, big difference. You don't have to have 3.33 million when you can have somewhere between $800,000 and $1 million to do the same work. You just have to get your money working harder. All right, so now many of you, I can already hear it say, okay, Chris, I don't have like $1.2 million right now to make 10% to pay me $100,000 a year. What do I do, right? What's actually possible here? If you're trying to make $100,000 a year, no, you don't have to have $1 million saved up to make that 10%. I mean, that's great if you want to make it today, but there are ways to work up to it. There are different investments. Some of them will pay you just a flat, you know, type of interest rate, especially if it's a contractual type of thing, like someone paying you 10% to lend them money. But you could also do things like my rental. You know, my rental is a great example where, you know, I bought 6 years ago, I bought a property in Memphis, Tennessee. Now that property at the time, I put $32,000 down on that property and it was paying me about $310 a month, right? So I was making roughly almost a 12% rate of return on that money. They call that a cash on cash return because the cash I spent was $32,000 with closing costs and I'm making about $310 a month or roughly about $3,700 a year, right? So I was actually making close to 13%. Anyways, but as time went on, guess what happened every year? Every year the lease came up for renewal. We raised the rent a little bit. Came up for renewal, raised the rent a little bit. Every time we came up for renewal, the last 6 years, we've raised the rent. Now currently, instead of making about $3,700 a year, I'm now making about $8,800, almost $8,900 a year off of this same rental. And the cool thing is they've also paid down my mortgage for me. That's also really good too. But remember that $8,800, almost $8,900 I'm making, that's after I've paid my mortgage payment, or really they've paid my mortgage payment for me, and paid the property management for me too. So this is what's net. I'm netting $8,900 a year. And I'm also, they're paying my mortgage down, the balance down, and there's appreciation. So in total, that $32,000 now has done about a 400% total return on my money. But just think about this. If I wanted to get to $100,000 a year, if I had just really 12 of those same properties, guess what? I'm over $100,000 a year, aren't I? Right? Because that's $8,900 times 12. Puts me over that. Really, I would need almost 11 properties and then a little bit extra. And I could have done that in 6 years. Guys, that's really like spending $350,000, $400,000 over time to eventually get it to that point. So it's not something you have to do overnight, but you can build up to it. That's why I talk about that compounding income. It's like compounding interest, but you're compounding your income to then take the income and then reinvest. And I didn't even talk about reinvesting that income to be able to make more money with it too. That's a totally different side note, right? Where we were able to reinvest and buy more properties with that money too. So That's the point, guys, that you can actually create a lot more wealth. Is it guaranteed? No. Are you always going to make 8,900 in 6 years? Absolutely not. I'm not saying that at all, guys. In fact, really, in this kind of environment, you're not going to make as much income because of higher interest rates. But rents are catching up. So as you're buying right now, rent prices are going up higher and faster so that you can create more cash flow, especially if you buy in the right places using the right contacts. All right, if you want to get more videos on this topic and find out how you create more passive income, just click subscribe and keep following us for more information.